Can we please welcome to the Matchbox stage, returning for the third time to talk about Matchbox Cars, the wonderful Pete Finch.
Thank you very much. There we are, Matchbox Cars. I'm going to talk to you about a passion that kind of had reawoken in me recently, and we'll get onto that. But we'll start with the boring history bit. Is that Matchbox Cars, they started, the first Matchbox car was made in 1953. It was this steamroller, and the reason was the inventor, the company was called Leslie, which was it was a gentleman called Rodney and Leslie, and they combined their names to create Leslie, one of them, I can't remember whether it was Leslie or Rodney, but their daughter went to school and they were told that they could bring toys to school, but they were only allowed to bring toys that could fit into a matchbox. And so, bing, he had this idea, and the Matchbox car was born. And the first few cars were the first few vehicles were quite prosaic. They were lots of tractors and trucks and vans, and then cars started coming on in, and it would be they would be cars that you would see in the street. There would be kind of nothing fantastical about it, but because of they really captured the imagination, and they were kind of a low-price toy, and kids were buying them by the bucket load, so much so that in my research, apparently they were making 2 million a week, and by 1968, and they were going worldwide. At this point, other manufacturers kind of woken up to the potential of this, and decided to copy. My favourite copy is the cigar box car by Aurora, which didn't really catch on. The one that started getting Matchbox worried though was over in America, the Hot Wheels, which these tended to be sometimes kind of they were always either American cars or fantastical kind of made-up cars. They had wheels with much thinner axles, and they could go much quicker across the floor, across the dining room table. And at this point, Matchbox started getting worried, and they brought out the super fast range, which I'll be predominantly talking to you about. But why is it that this why am I here talking about Matchbox cars? And the reason is that about 5 years ago, so as a kid, I had loads of Matchbox cars, and then they just stayed at my mum's house. They were actually in a shed. I had about 80 of them, and it was me and my brother. My brother's 6 years older than me, but we kind of shared. They were kind of a shared collection, and here's me and my brother, Krzysztof. And this is probably about the age when I was just getting into cars. I was really into them, and so my mum said, "Oh, you've got all these Matchbox cars. You know, can one of you kind of take them?" And I wasn't really that bothered about them, and so I kind of thought, "Oh, I'll just take a few, and I'll keep a few as a memento." But I said to my brother, mistakenly, a bad mistake. I said to my brother, I said, "You just take," because it isn't with all these cars. It wasn't very clear whose car they were. You know, they were our cars. So I just said to him magnanimously, "You just choose the cars that you want, and then I'll just pick out the ones, you know, the ones that are left." And then he came down with his 3 daughters, and it was like locusts, basically. And when I then came the week later to see what was left, they had just been ravaged. They were just the broken ones, and it was it was at that point I kind of went, oh, I did want them. I thought I didn't want them, and so at that point I decided that I was a bit pissed off, to be honest, and I haven't told my brother this. Luckily, he doesn't live in the St Leonards area. So after a kind of week of being a bit annoyed, I kind of then decided that I was going to buy some of these cars, because there's this thing called eBay, and you can bid on cars, you can bid on things, there's all sorts of things you can get on it. And I had a look, and you can buy Matchbox cars, so I decided that I was going to go on a journey and kind of buy the cars that meant something to me. So I'm going to take you on a little journey on the cars that meant something to me. But anyway, this is me and my brother, we've already ascertained that. This is Guildford Swan Lane, this is, and just up on the, about halfway up, was Guildford Dolls Hospital, which was the toy shop of Guildford, and it was there that we would go religiously. Every Saturday we had a routine. This was in the pre-swap shop, pre-Tiswas days. There was Tarzan, half-hour episodes on TV. We would watch that every morning, and then we would go into town and we would go to Guildford Dolls Hospital. Guildford Dolls Hospital, as its name suggests, was a medical facility for dolls. Bears, so if your bear's eye fell out, or the doll's head fell off, or if you were an Action Man, those of you may remember that the trauma of taking the Action Man's boot off and his foot comes off. You take him to Guildford Dolls Hospital, and they had a team of crack surgeons who would put them back together again. It wasn't on the NHS; it was private. You had to pay. But anyway, but they had all of the Matchbox cars, and we used to go have a look at them. And more often than not, we would pool our pocket money together, and we would buy one. So the first car that I decided that I was going to buy back, as it were, to buy was this one, was the Blue Shark. Now, lots of the cars that I had, I couldn't remember which was my car, which one was my brother's car, but this one was definitely my car. I don't know why, I don't particularly like this car particularly, because it's a kind of fantasy car. Whereas I liked kind of the slightly more realistic ones, but this one I always liked blue. When I was a small boy, this was kind of like one of the earliest cars that I could remember. Whereas my brother, this Lamborghini Countach was definitely my brother's car. The Maserati Bora, I remember that was a particular favourite. So when they brought out these superfast range, they had sort of bigger wheels, which made them go sort of a lot quicker, and that's a good example. This is an early superfast with slightly smaller wheels. It's a bit technical here, but we'll move on from that. That was the Lotus Europa, which was one of the early ones. I remember going round to David and Emma Crawford's house, and they had some Matchbox cars as well. And I was always fascinated by everyone else's cars. They'd have their other cars, and then I noticed on the bottom of the cars they had some paint stripes on it, kind of different coloured stripes, and I asked them, and what are these stripes for? And David, who was in the Cub Scouts, he said, "Oh yeah, the blue stripe means it's really good at going along the floor quickly, and the red stripe means that it can jump from the kitchen table onto the side dresser." And then Emma said, "And the yellow stripe means it's really good at cooking." I was always intrigued how different people played with it, and the sort of the enjoyment they got out of their cars. every year we used to go on holiday to France. This is Sarlat, and which was the nearest town that we used to go to. And just here on the right was a toy shop, and we always used to buy. The French didn't have Matchbox; they had Majorette, and we always used to buy a Majorette. So in my collection, there was there was one or two Hot Wheels which got in. But there was always a Majorette, and all those Majorette cars that I used to have, they kind of always reminded me of a holiday and of that special time. We would go in and kind of treat ourselves to that. But and all my cars, I used to keep them. I used to have a carry case. In fact, I had a couple of these carry cases, these sort of suitcases, which would be full of the cars. And if I was going away on holiday, I would take one of these suitcases. I would take my kind of favourite 24 cars, which was quite a hard decision to make. Or often, if I was going to go to, this is my auntie, and she used to throw these lavish parties in London. We used to go up, and I would always go with my little suitcase of cars to her house. Now, weirdly, all these cars that I have in the collection, the Majorette ones, I know that I bought them in that shop in Sarlat, but I can't actually remember the specific event. And of all these cars, and some of these cars would have been given as birthday presents or Christmas presents as well. But I can't actually remember I remember going and buying a car, but I can't remember, oh, that was the time when I bought a Maserati Bora, that was the time. The only time that I can remember is when my auntie came to stay. I happen to know, it was 1974, it was the summer of 1974, the World Cup was on, and my family's Polish, and Poland were playing in the World Cup and doing rather well that year. So that's how I can kind of remember that event when she came to look after us. And then she took me to Debenham's toy department, and we were looking at. I was there looking at all the cars, and she said, "Do you want to buy one?" So she bought me this, which was a Rolls Royce. And again, when I was rebuying all these cars, the Rolls Royce wasn't a particular car. It definitely wouldn't have been in that top 24 that I would have taken on if I was going away on a little break in my little suitcase. But when I kind of started thinking about it, it kind of had a resonance. This car was this has a memory. I associate this car with my auntie. The other thing that came with Matchbox, the other thing you could have was the Matchbox track. I actually think this is Hot Wheels track, actually. I think Matchbox track was yellow, but we had Hot Wheels. So what you could do is you could, at the top on the table, it's got a sort of a rather clunky, clumsy start system. You press it down and the cars are released. It does a loop-the-loop. Usually one of the cars flops down and falls down, and then they race on down. We used to do this, me and my brother did this a little bit, but we kind of found this slightly unsatisfactory. To be honest, I remember mainly this either being used, the track either being used as swords to attack each other, or we also, using elastic bands, we used to use them as skis and go down the stairs, much to the concern of my mum. It's another one. I don't know why. It was just another one that I liked. But then all of these cars, I kind of realised, having kind of done some sort of research into it, I kind of realised that all these cars are pretty much from about a 3-year period. These Superfast started in '69, but most of these cars that I've got are kind of from '71 to '74. That was the prime time when me and my brother were we must have just been in Guildford Dolls Hospital every week buying these cars. In the mid-70s, Matchbox then started trying to sort of innovate, and they started bringing out these cars which they were kind of fantasy cars. They were called Rollermatics, which meant that they had something on them the wheels would go round, and it would, a bit like a dynamo, would then make that blue bit go round, whiz round, which was kind of, for me, was kind of entertaining for about 5 seconds, but then you'd realise that those cars wouldn't go as quickly across the floor, across the track, and I didn't really like these Rollermatics. It felt like they were kind of messing with the formula. And then it got, in the mid-70s, then it got really stupid. Then we got this is called the Flying Bug. There was always also one called the Mini Ha Ha, which was a kind of a similar one. And I said that I couldn't remember kind of how I got those. I couldn't remember, with the exception of the one that I got from my auntie Halusha. But there's one other vehicle that I could remember getting, and it was there was a man who, when we were walking to town, we used to walk down an alley from my road, and then at the bottom of Flower Walk. There was a bench, and there was a tree there, and there was a man who always used to sit there, and I used to sort of run ahead of my mum, and I used to go up to this man, and I was like just chatting to him, and I invariably I'd have a car in my hand, and I would show him my car, and very, very excitedly, and I said to. And then one day, he gave me a little Matchbox car, and I said to my mum, I said, "Oh, do you remember that man who used to sit on on that bench? Here's a picture. That's my mum. I've taken this photo. There used to be a big tree there. So that's my mum sitting on the bench at the bottom of Flower Walk where that man." And she went, "Oh yeah, that's Mr. Moon." And I said, and I was, "Oh right, okay." And she said, "Yeah, he was a tramp. He was homeless, and apparently he lived in somebody's shed in Flower Walk. You can't do this anymore. He used to they used to let him live there in exchange for doing gardening work. So now it's PC gone mad. Apparently you can't have someone living in your shed anymore, doing gardening work for free." But anyway, Mr. Moon was there, and he gave me this Mercedes truck, and it was really weird because I always remember. I remember this truck, and I kind of associated with him. I wasn't really into trucks. I liked cars. I was kind of a bit purist. I didn't like trucks but I had this vehicle, and I kind of remembered it. And it was only when my mum told me this, I had no, because obviously I was like 5, you have no concept who all these people who you meet are. And I was really touched, kind of retrospectively, thinking, here's a man who has nothing, and yet has gone and bought this little boy who he sees kind of every couple of days, just because he knew how much I like cars. He went and got me this truck. So I was kind of really touched by that, and so this is the final vehicle that I decided to get. I decided I could have gone crazy. I could have got there were 80 vehicles. I could have replaced them all, but I just wanted to get the ones that were special. But and this is kind of hot off the press. This is as of that's yesterday. I have just won this vehicle, and that's going to be the last one. That's the last one in my collection. All the other ones, most of the other ones I've got, I'm buying them in that slightly nerdy, blokey way in the original packaging, because obviously you kind of threw them away. But there's real pleasure in seeing that box, because when you see that box, that reminds you of the pleasure when you're in the shop of seeing it. And I suppose the question is, what is it? Why is it that I needed this? I didn't realise I needed these cars until they were taken away from me. And I suppose it's because you know, you reach a certain age, and there's a certain point when you're quite blasé about your childhood, and then, you know, maybe it's not the same for everybody, but you start reconnecting with parts of your life. And so those little toys, I kind of realised when they had been taken away by my lovely nieces, I kind of realised that they were a little part of my life that I needed to hold on to. And, you know, maybe you've got toys that mean a lot to you. You know, maybe they were the Barbies or My Little Ponies or Action Men or whatever. But for me, it was the Matchbox Cars. So here is my slightly blurry picture. I've got a little cupboard, and these are the what's that? 12. There's 13 vehicles because that's that Vauxhall, the pink Vauxhall, doesn't have a box. Those are the vehicles that I chose to sort of represent my childhood and kind of take me back to my childhood. The Citroen there, actually, this one here, number 51. That's the only one that I didn't have as a kid. I kind of always really wanted it, but I could never find it, and now I was able to get it again. So yeah, it's you know, I'm using these toys as a way of reconnecting with the 5-year-old Pete, and kind of taking me back to those days with my brother, which was an incredibly happy childhood, incredibly happy times. It reminds me of my auntie, and it reminds me of my holidays, and so yeah, it's kind of a journey that's taken me like 45 years or so, maybe 50 to make. But thank you very much.